Welcome back to the Card Pool. I'm your host, Kyle.
And I'm Stu.
And it's been a while, but we are back. Yeah, there we go. It's good to be back. But today we are taking a look and going back all the way to 1996 for the set Alliances.
Yes, this is going to be part one of our two-part set on the Hidden Gems. Now, these are the cards that we are allowed to pick. The ones that we are not allowed to pick are in part 3. Those are the 10 most expensive cards in the set because they're probably more well-known than the ones we're going to talk about.
But no less good for it. So, what do you think, Stu? Should we just get on into this?
Nah, we'll wait longer. But yeah, let's go right into number 10, and if you don't mind me starting off.
Go ahead. The people have waited long enough. Give them what they want.
The people. All right, cool. At number 10, we're going to be looking at a card called Library of Latinim. Not Nam. Yep, yeah, I'm already starting with already misspellings and words. All right, but either way.
We really are back.
Yeah, but that shows we're officially back. So this is a sorcery that costs 5 mana, 4 generic, and an island, and it reads, target opponent chooses 1. You draw 3 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, or you search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So this is interesting because it does everything blue wants. It has card draw, it has a political kind of play, but it can also tutor. And the really strong thing about this card is it tutors for anything, because blue typically tutors for what? Instants, sorceries, and artifacts.
Yeah, pretty much. And then sometimes there's one like long-term plans that can get anything, but then it's only like third from the top in your deck, and yeah. Yeah,
but this one is a little bit more ideal to use because you choose the opponent. It's not like a randomly selected one. And in Commander, having 4 players, there's probably somebody else who's not as hot of a spot as you are. And they'll be like, you know what? Get the Cyclonic. I need the Cyclonic. Get the board wipe. Get the spot removal. And that's what kind of makes this shine as a better kind of tutor.
Yeah, I mean, objectively, this doesn't really seem great at first glance because it's like delayed draw 3 for 5 mana is really not all that great. And you can't depend on somebody to let you tutor. It seems like that would be a bad idea. But as you stated, in a multiplayer game, there's plenty of politics involved. That is where this card could really shine. So the idea of blue having a generic tutor just like black could is pretty good. It really is.
Depending on the deck, if you're using like the Locust God, drawing the cards doesn't hurt you either. So it's kind of like depending on your deck play, it's only putting them in a rock and another rock and then another hard place and then another rock. It's like to them, it's just not good, but you'll be getting value out of it regardless.
Yeah, so interesting. I don't know how powerful it is, but it is an interesting card to consider. Yeah, of course.
So what do you have then?
All right, well, I will go on to my number 10, and it's going to be an artifact called Shield Sphere. Now, this is a 0-drop, and that's primarily the reason I chose it, for a 0/6, and since it counts as a wall, that's since been errated to Defender. If Shield Sphere is assigned as a blocker, put a -0/-1 counter on it. So this was back in the day when they were trying to get creative with, oh, we don't need -1/-1s because this doesn't have any power to begin with. So they tried to make it relevant, and it's just a little confusing. But anyway, the reason that I picked this card is a 0 mana 0/6 with Defender is a really, really nice first turn or early turn Defender. Even if it does get a little bit smaller with time, it's primarily great for those Defender decks out there, like with Arcades, the Strategist being the biggest one. 0 mana, draw 1. Pretty good, and you get a nice blocker out of it, too.
Or the Tree Folk guy.
Yeah, or during the Siege Tower or any of those, you can kind of turn this into an attacker as well.
But this is really good, so like it works for decks that care about having like affinity, or the 0-drop is like really good if you're trying to go ahead and turn on one of those mana rocks that cares about having artifacts out.
Yeah, or like an Urza, or the new Galazeth Prismari, or any number of those that you can tap artifacts.
Well, I was talking more like a Mox Opal, but
that too.
Yeah, something like that. So like, or is it Mox Opal, the one that has Metalcraft?
Yeah,
that's
the one.
Well, I'm learning, everyone. I'm learning. But so there is one slight disadvantage, I'd say, to having this versus a regular Defender, is because typically if there's a 0/6 out there and your opponent has a 1/1, they're like, all right, I'm not going to attack. However, I would say you would want to attack, because the sooner you start attacking into this wall, the sooner you start chipping it away.
Yeah, and that's true. That is one of the potential situations where it might not necessarily be as great. But,
But it still will stay out there. It'll still protect your life, which is the entire point of this card. And again, for how recurable this is, this could be great in a Rona deck or any kind of like Daretti or anything else like that. So it is a solid thing, easy to tutor, and you're definitely getting your value out of 0 mana with it.
Oh, definitely. What's your number 9 here?
So my number 9 is a card I can't read. Viscerid Drone. I got the second word. So this is a Homrid?
Homerids.
The Homrid, I didn't even know this was a creature type until we started going through this. But this is a Homrid. I mean, we'll get a look into the oracle.
Lobster foe.
It's a
lobster
yeah,
foe.
It's crab people. So it's a 2-drop, 1/2 crab people. It costs 1 generic and an island. And it has 2 tap effects. The first one being you can sacrifice a creature and a swamp to destroy target non-artifact creature,
Right.
or you can sacrifice a creature and a snow-covered swamp to just destroy any creature. So it doesn't matter if it's a non-artifact or not.
Right.
And this is kind of cool for 2 reasons. One being this is in blue, and blue doesn't have a whole lot of destroying creatures. Like, sure, we see stuff like Pongify, which is a 1-shot effect, but this can be recurable, reusable. Sure, it's going to hurt you on a creature front and a land front, but since this is tied to black, losing the creature probably only helps you with putting stuff into the grave.
And hey, maybe if you have a Crucible of Worlds or something similar, maybe this isn't that bad. You know, you can replay some lands, perhaps. But I mean, and the other part of why this card is great that you didn't say was crab people.
Well, yeah.
Homerids are kind of a joke of Magic, but it's still like at least halfway sort of decent maybe card. So like like you said, it's removal on a body, and generally, even though the cost is high, that can make or break the difference in a game. So, hey, I'm all for it to kind of be looked at, and if you're really trying to build on a budget, maybe this guy is for you, you know?
So this creature type, I had to look it up just to be certain. It really is just...
It's a Homerid.
It's Homerid and Drone. You almost expect it to be a merfolk or something, but wow. Okay,
no,
Wizards.
Homerids are where it's at.
Yeah, apparently. Oh my goodness. But yeah, so this is kind of interesting because usually it has kind of what black wants, but this is more of a blue splash. And I don't know what home a Homerid should be in.
No idea.
But it definitely could be good for a budget blue deck if you are sparse on removal.
Sure, why not? So next up on our list here for my number 9, I've got another blue card, and I think this one will blow your socks off like it did mine.
I'm not even wearing socks.
See? It already worked. Number 9 is Spiny Starfish. So this is a 3-mana 0/1. So it taps for 1 blue to regenerate. And then, at the end of any turn in which Spiny Starfish is regenerated, put a Starfish token into play for each time it regenerated that turn. Treat those tokens as, 0/1 blue creatures. And look, we got some fish in here, too.
Oh, we're keeping the sea theme on strong right here.
Really feeling like we're under the sea here. So, you may look at this and say, well, it's a 0/1 for 3 mana. That's not all that great. Sure, it can regenerate itself to, save itself from dying if it blocks once.
Oh, yeah.
But then, of course, regeneration taps. So, it's only good for that once. The thing that kind of...
Well, no, you could use it more than once.
Well, exactly. That's why this card is on the list for me. The thing that breaks the mold here and breaks this wide open is you can regenerate something literally as many times as you want, and it doesn't matter. I mean, it won't really do anything, but in this case, it will do a lot of things, and that it will make a lot of tokens.
Yeah, and for blue, not... I mean, they make tokens, sure, but usually it's tied to drawing cards or some sort
Playing
of...
spells.
Yeah, something a little bit more through hoops. But just needing blue mana, this is a green effect, I'd say, or a black effect.
Oh, yeah. Maybe even better than one of them gets, because that rate of 1 mana for 1 token...
Oh, huge.
That's really, really good. So if you have infinite mana, that translates to infinite... 0/1s, but still, there's gotta be something you can do.
Well, you could boost them. It is blue, so there are. I mean, I'm thinking Lord of Atlantis, which is Merfolk.
Or
there's
Caged Sun, or any of the generic type.
But yeah, there's got to be something versus blue creatures across the board. But also, they don't produce tapped tokens.
Right.
That could have been said way better, but it doesn't matter. So the thing is, also, if you don't have a lot of creatures, you pay 1 mana to block and take no damage.
Yeah.
That's almost like a Spear's safety. I can't talk. It's kind of like fogging out. Like for 1 creature, you pay 1 mana, you fog 1 creature, which is as long as it doesn't have flying. This handles
you will
that.
have to do it the turn before because it only creates the tokens at the end of that turn that it regenerated. So you'll have to kind of preempt it a little. Well, that's sort
But you can still go ahead and use this for something else at that point.
You'll have to preempt it a little bit, but still, the fact that there is an infinite token outlet in blue, I was like, wait, what the what?
Yeah. So and it's honestly, it's super low costed for what it does. Sure, it's a 0/1, and Elish Norn will just prevent this from happening, but... Again, that's a weird scenario.
Very weird card, but worth thinking about, I think.
Well, talking about weird things, we're going to keep it on a whole animal train, and now we're going to talk into some gorillas. At my number 8, we have Gorilla Shaman. Now, this is a 1-drop in red for a 1/1 gorilla, and it has the effect for XX and 1, destroy target non-creature artifact with a CMC of that. So this right here is a great hoser for all artifacts that are in play, and this can also come out early and keep those soul rings in check. This is very similar to what we've seen with a deep fire elemental, except you just can't hit creatures with it.
Right.
Which I was thinking totally backwards about at first when I first saw this card.
Still, pretty cool though, because a 1/1 for 1 is already alright, but then an ability like that to destroy some really problematic stuff, and also not being a tap ability, it's only limited to how much mana you can produce. That's pretty great. So if you're creating, especially like you said, if there are tokens that are not creatures, which there are more and more artifacts that make, non-creature tokens, this can just get rid of all of them for 1 mana each. Pop, 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 pop. It's not, a hugely expansive ability, but it is good enough, I think, to merit an inclusion in a lot of aggressive red decks. And it's so good, in fact, that it just got reprinted in Modern Horizons too.
Yep, we could not plan that one out, actually. But yeah, it is a good card to take up in that set at the very least.
Definitely.
But it's just a great card because it works on multiple people. This is instant speed. It's not a tap effect. And usually for something like that, there's a lot more hoops you have to go through in order to be able to keep this recurring.
Right. And you can even use it the turn it comes out because it's not a tap ability, which is
so good.
Pretty good. Yeah, it really is.
So moving on to your next card, what do you got for us?
All right, so number 8. This is a very weird card, but I just had to choose it because it was so weird. Tornado. This is a green enchantment, costs 5, and has 2 abilities, one being a cumulative upkeep of 1 green, so every upkeep you have to pay increments 1 green, 2 green, 3 green to keep it around. Then it has another ability, which is you can tap 3 mana, pay 3 life for each velocity counter on Tornado. Destroy target permanent and then put a velocity counter on Tornado. Use this ability only once each turn, and of course effects that prevent or redirect damage can't be used to counter this loss of life. Don't know how relevant that is today, but still. So this is a weird card because it uses 2 different types of counters, which is something that Wizards usually tries to avoid when they design cards. This because of the confusion involved. This was just way back, so I don't think they were really thinking about it much at this point in time, but still. The first activation is basically free of this card because you don't have to pay 3 life because there are no counters on the card.
Sure.
So the interesting thing is paying 3 mana to destroy any permanent, that includes creatures, which is usually something green is very bad at doing, and lands, and pretty much anything problematic. That's like, wow, that actually deserves kind of a second look in a lot of at least enchantment decks, doesn't it?
Well,
you would think so.
Well, the thing is that this is pretty much Green's recurable version of Beast Within.
Yeah, it is.
This is Beast Within as an enchantment. The only problem is, so again, you are in green, you can ramp, but you would need 8 mana the turn it drops in to go ahead and use this effect.
Right.
Which is kind of high costed, especially with the cumulative upkeep coming around. Sure, the next turn, you can go ahead and hit a lot more permanents. You can use this at instant speed, which is totally great. But again, there's nothing truly bad about this card. And even though I'm saying these as minuses, this is still great. A recurable Beast Within in green is incredible.
Yeah, and it's on a permanent. Just very strange card. I couldn't not talk about this.
And again, if you are using an Enchantress deck, you can return them pretty easily from the grave. This is in green-white. You have Heliod's, Hall of Heliod's Generosity. So you can just go ahead and recur this. Don't worry about paying the extra life, paying the extra mana. Just go ahead, chuck it, play it into play, cheat it into play, whatever you want, and just reuse this. This is a great way to keep any problem out.
Yeah, and with some of the new Enchantress cards we're getting, especially the one that taps for mana for every enchantment you have, this just gets even better.
Yeah, you can be able to get this in quicker. However, if you're not using that stuff, just in a green good stuff kind of deck, this might be a little bit harder to kind of utilize.
Yeah. And if you use it a lot, those counters and life loss is gonna eventually stack up. So got to be careful with that.
Actually, cool thing about this is, again, since we would be saying Enchantress, that's green-white, Solemnity would be able to keep the counters from going on there, so you don't have to worry about any cumulative upkeep, you don't have to worry about any life. That's a good little powerhouse play.
Sure is.
Because at that point, what's the biggest issue? Well, probably the green, but also depending on the deck you're playing, the white. I'm just finding more uses for Solemnity.
The upkeep. Oh man,
it's so good. So good in that regard.
Well, what's your next one, Stu? What do we got?
So at my lucky number 7, we're looking at a card called Thoughtlash. Now this is an enchantment that costs 4 mana, 2 generic, and double blue. It has a cumulative upkeep as well, which we did not plan to put those back to back. Remove the top card of your library from the game. That's the cumulative upkeep. And if you do not, you remove your library from the game. And then you would go ahead and you would sacrifice this. Then also for 0, you can go ahead and remove the top card of your library from the game to prevent 1 damage dealt to you. So, what is so fab about this card, you may ask? All right, it seems a little weird. The cumulative upkeep is like a huge drawback, but this is for very particular kind of decks where you want to win by having no library. And this, like, sure, we recently saw an artifact come into play where it's like, all right, Leveler. This is great. It enters, your library is gone. You can go ahead, play something like a Thassa's Oracle or whatever, and you win the game. This is kind of like that. It's a telegraphed punch, but this can be used for multiple things. You can prevent yourself from losing if somebody's coming at you with a lot of attacks.
Yeah, you sure can. And if you're a combo deck, that's essentially exactly what you're trying to stop. So having this kind of ability to, you know, exile your library like that in permanent form is just almost better in a lot of ways.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't think that anyone, you know, competitive is going to play this over some of the other alternatives. But if you're more casual and you're looking to win the game with a Thassa's Oracle or a Laboratory Maniac or something similar, you should definitely be considering this, because not only can it help you win, but it's also a great protection against whatever might come at you.
Well, Thassa's Oracle might not work with this because this is on the upkeep. So it's untap, upkeep, draw. So if you have Lab Jace or Laboratory Maniac out, you win right then and there if they don't go ahead and respond to this.
Right, or you could just have 6 mana, play this, use the 0 to exile your deck, and then play Thassa's Oracle and win.
Well, oh yeah, you could. Yeah, just keep
it prevents the damage. You don't even have to have a target for that. You could just do it for that.
I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking the other way around. But yeah, that's kind of dumb.
Right.
And this is a super budget card too. So this is an easy win con where you don't even need infinite mana. You don't need anything else for it. It just wins you the game if you have the right stuff.
It certainly can. Very much worth considering.
Yeah, blew my mind out of the window. But either way, Kyle, what do you got? Is it something on the same level?
I don't know, but it's still pretty good. So number 7 here on my list is going to be Fyrexian Portal.
Oh, anything with Phyrexians you gotta take a note of.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a 3-mana artifact. So for 3 mana, not even a tap ability, just tap 3 mana, target opponent looks at the top 10 cards of your deck and then separates them into 2 face-down piles. Choose one of those piles and exile it. Then you search the remaining pile for 1 card and put it into your hand. Then you shuffle the remaining ones into your deck.
So if you're still with us after that entire speech right there, Kyle, do you want to say it in layman's terms?
Of course. So basically, what we're looking at here is for 3 mana, you get to essentially pick 1 card out of the top 10 cards of your deck, which is, of course, kind of selectively gone through by one of your opponents. So it's like a sort of recurring factor fiction. Can be better,
but
can be worse, but you can also go a lot bigger. And again, just like Thoughtlash, this has the potential to cut down the size of your deck dramatically, very, very quickly, and provide huge potential card selection.
Oh yeah, and also you only, like, sure, they put it into 2 piles, and you're going to pick 1 out of the other pile. Like, obviously, if you're trying to win by Lab Jace or something like that, they know not to give that to you as an option. But still, for 3 mana, you can use this over and over and over again in the same turn.
Exactly.
And just kind of like slowly wean your deck down. Like how many turns would you think it would take to do that? Like,
it reminds me of Demonic Consultation or something similar to that, which is like a key, competitive commander staple. It's not as good as that because you don't have much control over it for it to be good. But still, like 3 mana to look at 10 cards. I don't care if you lose some of them. That's still a great deal.
And if we were to do the slow math on this, sure, you get 7 cards to start out, you draw for turn, and like, all right, turn 3, you'll have 3 mana. You've already gone through about 10 cards your deck, maybe 11. So, all right, you only need to use this 9 times, then you're at 0. Yeah. And a little less than that. So it's like, all right, cool. Well, it is 9 times, because if you were to still draw cards after that. But this is still something, it speeds up the game, which kind of sometimes needs to happen in certain play groups.
Yeah, definitely does. So again, artifact that any deck can use, ability that's only limited to the amount of mana you have, and that huge card selection makes this definitely worthwhile in my opinion.
Oh, huge, totally huge. But moving on to number 6, this will be my final card for this part of the video. We're going to be looking at a card called Soldier of Fortune. Now, this is kind of a simpler card, but I like how it works. It is a 1-drop red 1/1 mercenary human. And for 1 red mana, you can tap it and target player shuffles his or her library. So this is kind of like, all right, not as flashy as some of the other cards that we've talked about. It's a little low impact, but it's also a card where you kind of ruin somebody's turns. Because if they are doing stuff like a Vampiric Tutor or any kind of tutor or anything that messes with the top of the deck, they hate this card because,
Yeah.
all right, you respond to them doing stuff and they're never going to get the effects they want.
Yeah, and those kind of top deck tutors are so ubiquitous in Commander. Everybody and their brother uses them. So the idea that you can, I mean, there are stuff that like lets you instant speed mill people that can ruin your day. This is sort of a similar concept, you know, where if there's so many top deck things, and even Brainstorm, you know, where you're setting up the top of your deck to do something broken.
Sylvan Library, same kind of thing.
This can just stop it cold, and that's like pretty good tool to have, honestly.
But this is also used in an advantage way for yourself. Scroll Rack is one of the cards where it's like, it's really good the first turn you use it, depending on how many cards are in your hand, because you're going to get all the junk back that you didn't want, unless you have some sort of tutor to make it so your deck shuffles.
And Sensei's Divining Top is the same way, pretty much.
So if you have something here where it's like, all right, I don't need these 3 cards, 2 cards, 1 card, let me put it on top, I'll shuffle it, it's out of the way, now I can go ahead and get some fresh stuff. This is very good for what it does, because nobody really moderates this as a threat, and if somebody's wasting something on this, it kind of is a red flag on the table to be like, they're trying to find something very particular, and that's why they're trying to get rid of this. That player should be assessed a little higher as a threat. And again, this is doing nothing except sitting out there and giving you some potential value. So it's kind of interesting at how diverse it really is for such a simple card.
Yeah, very, very narrow in usage, perhaps, but useful nonetheless.
Yeah. So what do you have, Kyle, for your number 6?
Well, to round out the list here, I'm going to be taking a look at Seldevi Agate. This is a
I'm so glad you read that.
2 mana, 1/2 black cleric creature. And it has a tap ability, which allows you to sacrifice a black creature or an artifact creature to add an amount of black mana equal to that creature's casting cost.
So CMC.
And of course, the ability can be used at instant speed. So why am I talking about this? Well, for either just black decks in general or black decks that maybe like to use some artifacts in different ways, this can be a huge mana booster. The potentially limited uses, still a very good, basically, mana elf for any deck that is looking to, you know, sacrifice its creatures for value. I mean, just think about using this with like something like a Burnished Heart, you know, for example. You play this on a turn 2, you play a Burnished Heart on turn 3, then if you want to wait until turn 4, you essentially have 7 mana available.
Sure.
And that's just like the very bottom floor of what this can do.
Well, also, there's cards where their CMC is not where you actually pay for them to come in. There are black cards where it's like this is reduced by the amount of creatures that you have in play or something. There was a black legendary where it was like, if you can lower the CMC of this card by like having, and I think you had it, you sacrificed 2 creatures and you lowered the cost of it.
Or something like a Metalwork Colossus where you can, you know, spend nothing to play it and then generate 11 mana.
Yeah, it's huge. So there's tons of ways where it's like, all right, if you think it's going to be like, all right, this small incremental gain, no, you can make it totally landslide by what you have going on, and that is really what gives us a lot of value. The only problem is you want it to have haste, and black doesn't have a lot of ways outside of the tradition of like, all right, Lightning Greaves,
1,000-year Elixir,
1,000-year Elixir.
Like
and that would be the only thing about this. It's a little slow, but again, like you're saying, black loves sacrificing creatures. You're probably getting 2 effects, like a solid ETB, and then you lose the Runescar Demon, or you go ahead and you play, like, I'm saying really poor examples here, but like you can...
similar to Energy Tap in a way, isn't it?
It's very similar. Yeah, and Energy Tap's a blue instant where it's like you just tap a creature and then you get the CMC as blue mana. Yeah. This is black's variant of it.
And it's still very good, I think.
And the cool thing is it does work for artifact creatures, because if it didn't, then it would kind of hurt.
Yeah, it would.
But
still very cool.
Very cool, and definitely a good card to note. But that is going to wrap up our part 1 video of the Hidden Gems. Our next one that's coming out is going to be part 2. These are going to be the cards that are 1 through 5 and the tippy top of what we were able to dig through.
Yes, indeed. So, until then, if you want to make sure that you get all the notifications from us you can and stay up to date with what you're doing, you can like us, subscribe to us, follow us on any one of our social media channels. We're on Reddit, we're on Tapped Out, where you can see all of our deck lists, and we're also, of course, on Facebook and Twitter, and of course Gmail. We're all at the handle TheCardPool if you want to find us.
Gmail, because we are some G's. And also, you can ring the bell down the bottom part, and this way we'll be all set to let you know instantaneously via YouTube once something new comes fresh.
For sure. But until next time then, I am Kyle.
He is Kyle, and I am Stu. And we will see you next time at the Card Pool. It's too good.
I love that.
It's been a minute, but I'm glad we're back at this.
Oh, me too. Me too.